I'm your host, Dr. Lori, and welcome to Universally Unique, exploring the neurodiverse world of the extraordinary. This podcast fosters curiosity and understanding about neurodiversity while empowering individuals with tools for acceptance and inclusion in classrooms, the workplace, and communities. Featuring shared stories of neurodiverse life experiences, it sheds light on navigating a world not designed for diversity. Universally Unique starts now. Hi, welcome to Universally Unique. I'm Dr. Lori Noto, and my guest today is Dr. Andrew Deacon. And before we get started with Dr. Deacon, we're going to take a few minutes to take a couple of breaths. We'll do 3 box breaths. So we're going to breathe in for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4, and repeat. So I'll cue that a little bit, and then we'll just get going. So breathe in, 3, 2, 1, hold, 3, 2, 1, breathe out, 3, 2, 1, hold, 3, 2, 1, breathe in, 3, 2, 1, hold, 3, 2, 1, breathe out, 3, 2, 1, hold, 3, 2, 1, breathe in, 3, 2, 1, hold, 3, 2, 1, breathe out, 3, 2, 1, hold, 3, 2, 1, and we're finished. Just a few breaths, kind of get us all focused. So, Dr. Deacon, I hope you don't mind if I call you Andrew.
Please.
Okay. So the reason that I've invited you to visit with us today is I thought that you could tell us a bit about your journey as an individual who is neurodiverse. And if I am not mistaken, you sort of discovered this at a later point in time. So if you would give us maybe a little idea of your journey, maybe a little information about how school and learning and some things were before you learned about your neurodiversity and how things have been after that.
Great. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for inviting me, to be part of the podcast. I've listened to the first 2 episodes, and I'll be honest, that was on intent. I didn't want to be swayed in any particular way by other individuals that you have interviewed. So after this recording, I'll be sure to go back and listen to all of the other episodes to hear what other folks had to say. And I did that because I really wanted this to be authentic, genuine. I didn't want to be impacted by anything others have said. So hopefully through my responses, there will be some connections to what others have said. But I'm so thrilled to be here and to share my story, which actually hasn't always been the easiest to share. And now I'm sharing it with the world. So how very exciting.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, and to get to a place. And I was just a part of a research study a few weeks ago where I was asked to speak about my lived identity as a school leader who happens to be LGBTQ. And I see that talking about my neurodiversity is just another piece of that. So it's really coming full circle for me. So I appreciate these opportunities to talk about where I've been. So growing up, both discovering that I was a gay man, but also struggling with anxiety and depression, both because I had inherited that from, I will say, both of my parents, one of them having the diagnosis, one of them I highly suspect also suffers from an anxiety disorder, particularly social anxiety. So having that background coupled with the challenges of growing up gay in a rather rural area of Connecticut, and not really having labels at that particular time, going through school in the 90s, not being able to put my thumb on exactly what it was that I was experiencing, really, as you can imagine, made processing uh, different events, experiences from my life rather challenging. Um, and coupled with all of that, as a youngster, I would say I was probably early teens, if not 12 years old, when I was diagnosed with anxiety, depression, but also with obsessive compulsive disorder as well. And I really think a lot of that was a mask. If
Hmm.
I was perfect, right? If I showed the world that my work was perfect, that I put in 110% into everything I did, that maybe my difference in being a gay man with, now I've come to know also, anxiety, depression, maybe could have been masked to the world, right? Um, and then later on, discovering just a few years ago, I would say about 5 years ago in my mid 30s, that I also have ADHD. So that was quite a revealing diagnosis to get as well. Um, when I thought I knew exactly what was going on, but to learn that later in a most recent iteration of therapy was really quite something. And then I just wanted to share too that recently I've been reading this book by Judith Joseph, High Functioning. And she talks about what it means to have high functioning depression. And so I have given myself that self diagnosis of
Yeah.
having high functioning depression, and learning about the struggles that come with that as well. But it really, all the things that she speaks about really takes into compilation the anxiety disorder, the obsessive compulsive disorder, the depression, all of that really comes through in this high functioning disorder. So it's been quite a journey. I will say I never thought I would find myself in education, given that my experiences in education weren't always positive, as you can imagine, right?
Of course.
But it was the individuals, the adults, the adult relationships that I had in school that were really transformative and impactful for me. And if I could do that same in return for other students who struggle with different facets of their identity, and if I could be that champion for them, then I have done what my calling is here.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm curious because you have several education degrees. You were actively teaching, and I believe at the time of your diagnosis of ADHD, you were working in an administrative role. So you met lots of children who had a variety of different learning needs and challenges. At one point, you even worked at a school where that was their primary focus. And you were never suspicious that maybe some of the things that were going on with them were things that were going on with you?
No, that's a great question. And it's interesting to note that I didn't really have that introspection at that time. I didn't have that clarity. Um, it was always scary for me. It was scary to have to dive in and figure out who I was. At that point, first year of college, I was an out man, but I
Mm-hmm.
still struggled with internal homophobia for years. Being in social circles with other gay men was really challenging for me. So when I had to put the spotlight on myself, that was really hard to do. And I think that's why it was later in life where I really started to have the language to describe the multiple identities that I have and the complexities that come with each of those identities. So that's a really provocative question that you ask. I never really thought about that in terms of knowing myself. Uh, But I wonder now, being reflective, if I had known in a clearer sense, in a clearer way of my multiple identities, would I have been a stronger, more impactful educator?
Well, that, hindsight's always 2020.
Right.
And I think given given what I do know about your impact on education, I don't think that it would have gotten better, but it's still been quite strong. I think many people anticipate that if somebody has ADHD, that means that their focus is all over the place. They can't get anything done. How did you possibly get a doctorate? You have multiple degrees, multiple certifications. I'm anticipating that some of that OCD was probably what carried you through.
Yeah, there was definitely some compensation going on there, absolutely. And I will say, though, there were times where, as much as I find myself to be a very organized person, um, there were times where I struggled to balance the competing priorities that I had in my life. And that is something I still struggle with today as a leader. I may not have the official title as an administrator at this particular point in my career. I've taken, I won't call it a step back, but a step forward in terms of really focusing in on my passions. And I'm sure we'll get to this at another point, so I won't belabor it now. But as an administrator, it was really, there were times where it was very challenging for me, given all of the balls that I had to keep juggling in the air and to prioritize what needed to get done in what particular order. And as a person who struggled with anxiety, I sometimes found it challenging to ask for help and support. There is this theory in educational leadership called distributed leadership, where the goal of a leader is to tap into the strengths of those within their organization and to really leverage those strengths, to tap into them. And I will say, as much as I believe in that theory and praise that theory, I'm not so sure that I was terribly ever good at it, being a distributed leadership. For example, if somebody took on a task and did something, but it came back to me and it wasn't done the way that I thought it should have been done, right? Even though it was
Yeah.
perfectly fine, because it didn't have that OCD seal of approval on it, I would take it and maybe do it over or do it better. And I think that stems from, for example, growing up when my mother would have me make my bed, and then I would get home from school and I could tell she went back and did it when I was away because it wasn't up to her standards, right? So it's funny how we carry those traits, or we pick up those traits from our parents moving
Yeah.
forward. So, you know, it's it's um, it's about reflection, I would say, reflection and thinking about what could I have done better? What can I do better next time? Um, and just always trying to grow and evolve in both my personal and professional life, which there's a whole nother story we can get into, right?
Yeah.
In
Well, we'll
terms of,
have another session for that
yeah,
part.
right,
Um,
yeah.
that one's a long one. So during the course of all these variety of experiences, you kind of mentioned there were some educators who you saw as being terrific, and that kind of drove you towards the idea of being an educator. So were there particular people in your life at various points in time that you felt really were your cheerleaders that were helping you move forward?
Oh, absolutely. I can, there are a handful of teachers in high school who just treated me with dignity and
Mhm.
respect and believed in me and fostered a strong relationship with me. And it's those same things, those same traits when I met new mentors, new educators throughout my life, throughout my undergraduate and my graduate uh, experiences. Those are the folks who had the most impact on me. Those who believe yes, they probably saw my neurodivergence and the struggles that those presented, but they capitalized on the strengths.
Yeah.
And they carried me through. Um, they they made me believe in myself, and with their encouragement, I persisted and achieved my goals and dreams. So,
No, I think unfortunately, as you well know, the relationships are like one of the key pieces for anyone's success in probably any area of life. And, when those are not there, outcomes are definitely not good. So it's good to hear that there were people early on who, even though no one really knew exactly all the things that were kind of going on with you, and you didn't know what was going on with you, but they saw something in you and kind of helped
thanks.
you move forward.
And I would be remiss if I didn't point out the impact that you've had on my life, as my mentor, through my master's degree and earning my certification in elementary education, all the way through completing my doctoral degree. And I will say, I don't think I got anything past you. You nailed all of my diagnoses right off the bat.
Well,
I
thank
think,
you for embarrassing me. Okay. Um,
I think one more, as I'm thinking about that, one more thing that I haven't mentioned, and the audience can probably hear this too, is that I have a hearing impairment as well, which also further complicated some of the learning rather growing up, and also made some friendships challenging and whatnot because folks maybe didn't understand um, what it meant to have both hearing challenges, but also all of these other identities as
yeah.
well.
Well, and also perhaps not always telling people what you needed.
Never, right? And that's the OCD side of me is that I can't tell folks what I needed. And I'll be honest, I don't think I knew what I needed. I didn't grow up in a time where um, advocacy was necessarily a thing. Or I think too, if looking back, I think I was always on the um, like the cusp of maybe needing some services, but
Yeah.
I think I overcompensated just enough that I never received any services. So, for example, I struggled in reading all throughout, all the way up through college. Reading was never my thing. It's quite fascinating to see that that's actually where my career landed me. And I think that's a reason why, because reading was such a challenge for me growing up, and it wasn't an activity that brought me any joy, that I wanted to become a stark advocate for kids who struggle in learning to read as well. Um,
Well, and I think you present a good example of somebody who's moved past that, who now reads voraciously. I mean, you read lots of books, probably many of them are professionally oriented, but you're always in the middle of a book somewhere.
yeah.
Um,
And I will, if I may, just add one little quick point. The piece about advocacy, where I really learned about that was in my first position, where I was working at a private organization designed for students with learning differences. And it was through being a teacher there that I got to learn what it meant to equip students with the tools to advocate. So I wish I had those when I was growing up. So I'm glad to see how much we have advanced in this field,
mhm.
and we are now working. I hope, and I think it's most places, right? We can always get better in public education, but I think we're doing a fine job of really starting to work with students to give them the language they need to be able to advocate for their needs.
Yep. So one of the questions that I would like to ask you, which I think kind of parallels a bit with this, is where's your safe place? Where's your welcoming community? What places did you find that?
That's a great question because I think that's still evolving in my life. I'm still trying to figure out that I have many safe spaces, right?
Hmm.
But what I've learned is that there are some friendships that remain a lifetime, and there
Hmm.
are others that come in your life when you need them, and they may transition out at times when you don't need them. So I'm trying to become more comfortable with that notion, that idea, than saying I have like a specific place because it has evolved. It has changed over my life. Are there moments where I wish I had that constant community? Absolutely. Do I think I have one? I do. For
Yeah.
example, our friendship,
Yeah.
and your continued mentorship, that's a community that's going to, or a relationship rather, that's going to span a lifetime. Um,
Yeah. I'm not that easy to get rid of.
and I'm thankful for that.
Yeah.
But that's exactly how I see it, is that I'm becoming more comfortable now with this notion that I may have this safe place right now in my life, but it may not be there in a year or two because my needs evolve, my needs change, and it may be that I need a different kind of safe community,
Yeah.
safe
Well, I
space.
think recognizing what is a safe space as you outgrow maybe one, then you know what you know what you're looking for in the next one. Which I think, as you describe students, I don't think that necessarily they always understand how to find those
Absolutely. And this
spots.
is huge for me to say because all throughout my life growing up, it was about trying to fit in.
Yeah.
And I no longer have that need. And I think a lot of that comes with the realization of figuring out my complex identity, these multiple points, right? And just becoming more comfortable with myself. And if I dare say, more in love with myself. I wouldn't say that's always been there in my life, right? There's
Yeah.
because the world, and I don't want to sound doom and gloom, but we live in a heteronormative world where it's not necessarily okay to be who I am each and every
Yeah.
day. And yet, I'm at a place in a particularly challenging moment in America's history rather, where I do feel comfortable with who I am, and that's a point of pride.
Yeah. And as it should be. So I have a guess about this, but tell me what you think your superpower is.
Oh boy, my superpower. Ooh.
Could also be your Achilles heel. It could be both.
I really hope folks would say that my superpower is my deep empathy for others and the connections that I foster with folks when I meet them, and the relationships that I make with others. Knowing that I can hopefully provide someone with a safe space, should they need that. It's really about that human connection. That's what keeps me going as a
Hmm.
person, and I hope others see that as a superpower that I have.
Yeah, and a critical one. I mean, we know over and over and over again, and I think the book that you showed us earlier on high functioning depression talks a great deal about relationships and building relationships, and we need to help all of our individuals in our lives build those things, and most especially our students who are neurodiverse. Um,
Okay, so here's the OCD part of me. I have to know, did I get the answer correct? Was that the superpower you were thinking, or something different?
there was no correct answer.
See, and that's a part of me. I live in this, that's always been hard for me too. I've always been, is it right or wrong, right?
Yeah,
And
and
knowing
sometimes
that,
it's neither. Sometimes what it is what you think it is at that point. I bet if I asked you that question at a different point in time, you'd have a different answer.
absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me, what ways you have learned to honor yourself and your uniqueness.
Hmm. So I would say one thing is so trying to get more in tune with myself, right? Some may some of us may label that as being spiritual, um, but really having that inner dialogue with myself, um, to be able to keep reflecting, thinking about where are my areas of strength, but also my opportunities for growth. I'm
Mm-hmm.
always thinking about that to keep myself going. Can you share that question with me again, just to make sure I.
How do you honor yourself and your uniqueness?
Yeah, and I would say the other piece would be not ashamed of showing who I am to the world. I never would have in my 20s thought of attending a pride event. And now I will go with rainbow flags all over me and whatnot, and just celebrating who I am and the various communities that I belong to, and not being ashamed for it. Uh,
Yeah. Well,
which
I think authenticity is so critical, and I think many individuals who are neurodiverse spend a lot of time, like you did at different points in time, trying to act like the situation they were in was a perfectly comfortable one and it was working just fine for them. And they masked all of that, and then they carry that and maybe get home and sort of collapse because they've used so much energy
it's
to do that.
exhausting. Absolutely, yeah. And there's nothing more that brings there. There are many things that bring me joy in life, but one thing, for example, I was coming home from New York yesterday on the train, and there was an individual wearing a shirt that said, "It's cool to be me. I'm neurodiverse," and it just brings such joy, right? Because there is now we're seeing comfort and acceptance. Um, in the world around neurodiversity, which is so affirming and just I can't be any more excited to see um,
Yeah.
folks being honored and
Yeah,
honored.
no, and I think it's wonderful that people are starting to say, this is who I am. This is who I am. This is how I operate. These are the things that I need you to do or not do. I think one of the things that you finally learned to do was to tell people where to stand or to sit so that you could hear them better, which I know from what you were saying earlier, you were not telling teachers that I need to sit in a certain spot in the room because I can't hear you if I'm over here. And it doesn't seem like a really big deal, but it obviously was because you didn't do it for a long time.
Oh, absolutely, it's a huge deal.
Yeah.
Huge. And now, even going to dinner with friends, I'm okay now saying, may I sit at this seat?"
Yep. Yeah.
Or,
And it's modeling for everyone else. So unfortunately we are out of time, which always goes by so fast, and I really appreciate the fact that you were willing to take your time to come and to visit with us, and perhaps we'll delve into something in the future. We'll think about maybe coordinating a topic or something. Maybe you and I can talk education of folks that are neurodiverse within a K to 12 environment at some future point in time. But thank you very much for taking the time to spend with me. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here and having the opportunity to share a little bit of my story with you. And thank you for creating this podcast and making this available to the world because I know there's going to be a listener out there who this is just going to totally transform their life. So thank you.
That is our hope. That is our hope. So, all right. Well, thank you. And everyone have a good rest of your day. Thank you for listening to Universally Unique, exploring the neurodiverse world of the extraordinary. Join me, Dr. Lori, on Transformation Talk Radio every second and fourth Monday at 11:30 Pacific Time as we continue to explore navigating a world not designed for diversity. For advocacy and support for individuals with disabilities, let's connect. Learn more about consulting and life coaching at notoholisticconsulting.com.